So my name is Katie Krause. I work for Nebraska Extension. If you're familiar with Nebraska Extension, we are the extension component of the land-grant university here at UNL. I did go to Ohio, the Ohio State University. Both my bachelor's and master's degrees are from OSU. So they're both in early childhood education with a focus on intervention and special ed. And then I've been in Nebraska for almost 8 years now. My husband is from Wood River, and we were both in Ohio. He had desired to move back to be closer to his family after living overseas for quite a few years as well. And I'm like, there are no good jobs in Nebraska. And there actually are a lot of wonderful jobs in Nebraska. We came to find out because I found the job I have now when I was online trying to see that there are no jobs in Nebraska, which was completely incorrect. So I've learned a lot about this great state in these 8 years almost that I've been here. And I'm very fortunate to work for UNL. I'll go ahead and show you this next slide is our early childhood team. We are all across the state of Nebraska. As you can see, I'm over in Douglas and Sarpy County in Omaha. We have educators like myself all across the state, but I am the only person that really specializes in, actually Sarah Roberts up in the Northeast also specializes in nature-based learning and science. And then myself really has this focus on nature-based learning and our early childhood health outdoors project, which is just really getting ramped up in the last couple of years. But there are educators all across the state in early childhood, as well as horticultural, nutrition, 4-H, all kinds of areas. So if you're familiar with the Master Gardener program or 4-H, those are colleagues of mine. But I specialize, like I said, in early childhood. I tell people if children run faster than me or they are too heavy for me to pick up and move, they're probably outside of my age range of expertise. So I will say in the outdoors, I actually am much more comfortable teaching all the way up through the grades. But I just formal education beyond kindergarten is a little outside my wheelhouse. So like I said, this is kind of our statewide map, just to give you an idea of what where everyone is located. So this is the introduction that I typically do in our child care professional development. So a lot of my work, the majority of my work is really to provide professional development to early childhood educators. So those people that work with children ages mostly birth to 5, sometimes up into 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. A lot of child care centers, a lot of private and public preschools, Head Starts, kind of that group is who most of our work is with. Some of my colleagues do a lot of work with families. I do very limited work just because I'm in Omaha and I've got plenty of teachers to keep me busy there. But I do some family engagement work with a small kind of group of nature-based families that we just kind of meet and support each other in getting our kids outside. But this is an introduction that I'm sure with this group, I'm guessing it's probably almost all outdoors, but I wanted to share it because it's how I introduce most of our nature-based learning classes with early childhood educators, kind of gets them thinking about their own experiences first as being young children. And we know there's a lot of great research about connection to nature and how our connection to nature when we're very young oftentimes is very indicative of what our connection to nature might be like as we get older into adulthood. And still, for the most part, hoping this maintains, but I'm worried about it. Right now, I would say probably between 90 and 95% of the teachers that we work with, right, they range anywhere from just out of high school all the way up to in their very close to retirement years or maybe beyond retirement years, this memory is outside. Right. So and I'm guessing on a conservation environmental education conference, I'm guessing probably everyone I would imagine is probably experiencing this outdoors. But for the most part, our early childhood educators are still feeling that these wonderful memories of childhood, their favorite place to be is somewhere outdoors. I'm curious to see how this might change the next 10 to 15 years. We're already noticing some of our younger participants are like, oh, it was, somewhere inside where we could, as Richard Lee would say, somewhere where the plugs were, right, where you could plug things in. So I just saw a couple of you guys popped your screens on too. If you want to have your video on, I know a lot of folks are like, ooh, a conference, I'm going to not have my video on. That's totally fine. But if you do want your videos on too, it's, we can, this is a presentation, but we can definitely have more of a conversation. You're welcome to drop questions in the chat box as you have them, or We have a pretty small group. I think there's only 40 people here. So even if you need to unmute yourself at some point and ask a question, I teach online all the time. So you won't throw me off. I'll appreciate the questions. So to kind of move on, kind of from this introductory question, as we kind of get going here. So my work with Nebraska Extension and this early childhood health outdoors work really started right when I got here. So I got here in summer of 2014. And by the fall, I was already receiving a lot of questions from folks that I worked with about helping them with their outdoor environments. But I am not a landscape architect. I am not a horticulturist. I am not a landscape designer. I've worked in many early childhood settings. I have a really good concept of environment as a third teacher. So the idea that we learn in the environment has the ability to very positively affect young children, whether it's an indoor, outdoor environment, whether it's a natural, environment, the way that nature gave it to us, or whether it's a modified environment that we've tried to either naturalize or not, an environment is highly impactful on children. So, but I didn't really have a model to work with. I was kind of, for a couple of years, just kind of floating around, trying to find, not working too, trying to get my feet settled here. And I was really fortunate to stumble across the Natural Learning Initiative, which is out of NC State's College of Design in North Carolina, at a conference at the Children and Nature Network conference in 2016. So I attended this conference in actually 2015. It might have been 2015 even. So 2015, 2016, listened to a presentation by Nilda Koska, who's in the green sweater in the picture on the left, and then Robin Moore, who's in the vest on the right, and was just like, this is it. Like, this is exactly what we need. Because, a lot of early childhood programs have extremely limited budgets. We oftentimes call the outdoor spaces, I just came across this term last week in some research I was doing, called SLAPs, which is spaces left after planning. So those fenced in areas at childcare centers or schools, they're not part of the plan, whether, they're just whatever's kind of left over, and that's the space for children play. So I was very excited to see this, learn about their model, which they called Preventing Obesity by Design. They have decades at this point of research to show that this model, utilizing a circular pathway, including plants and annual and perennial vegetable and fruit plants, really, really has a great way of drawing children into the landscape. Children are more active in these spaces. Children want to stay outside for longer in these spaces. Teachers want to stay outside for longer in these spaces, which is usually the barrier, is teachers might not want to stay outside. Children are not engaged in some traditional settings, or teachers are not comfortable in oftentimes the heat or the cold, depending upon what time of year it is. So by doing these kind of different environmental changes to their outdoor spaces, we can really have these great impacts. So in 2017, we're really fortunate, or actually 2018, Robin and Nilda came here. We had an internal grant through UNL that brought Robin and Nilda here to help kind of jumpstart our experience, kind of teach myself and our colleagues a little bit more about how they do their community engagement process, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and really decided that this is what we want to do going forward. Fortunately or unfortunately, NC State does not have the capacity to support the national expansion of their great work. They really have a lot of work to do in North Carolina themselves. They do a lot of great research. So expanding this program is just something that was beyond their capacity. So about 5 or 6 years ago, they partnered with the National Wildlife Federation and created this program called ECHO, which is Early Childhood Health Outdoors. It's a partnership with NLI, our colleagues at NC State, and now Nebraska Extension and the Nebraska Wildlife Federation have also officially collaborated with NWF and the ECHO program that started last year. And our role really is that we want all children to have daily access to quality outdoor environments where play and learning support development across all domains: cognitive, physical, social, and emotional. So we're really super excited to have this partnership now with NWF and then Nebraska Wildlife Federation. We also have a lot of really exciting things that we're working on internally, which we'll talk about as well. So if you've heard of the Grand Challenges at all, it is an internal grant competition here at Nebraska, University of Nebraska-Lincoln. There are these 8 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, I always forget, I just care about early childhood, but these 7 other focus areas So we're very excited that we're going to be submitting a planning proposal. If anybody's ever tried to build teams across a university system, there's a lot of opportunities for teams, but it's kind of hard to always get connected with the right folks because it's just such a large organization. So the Grand Challenges has really brought together a wonderful team where we're also working with Sarah Carley, who is a landscape architect with the College of Architecture here at UNL, who has got several partnerships going on actually with Game and Parks and other groups that is looking at this work within both the early childhood setting and in more public spaces. Our colleagues at Nebraska Wildlife Federation, George Cunningham, is also working a lot and looking at how these can be implemented beyond just the childcare and school settings, but in public spaces. So we're really excited that our Grand Challenges opportunity is hopefully kind of jumpstarting some of the internal players that we have to really look at this, not only from the early childhood perspective, but also looking at research, the landscape architecture folks. We've got some psychology folks on board, people that do research in physical health and development. So we're really, really exciting. Molly mentioned Nature Explore. So I feel like, especially in Nebraska, where the Nature Explorer is based out of, we do have to talk about our colleagues and friends at Nature Explore. Nature Explorer's model is a little bit different than ours. If you're familiar with Nature Explorer, I think as we go on through the day, you will probably experience some of that. We also, the biggest part is just that we use an extremely collaborative design process. And the community engagement methods that we use are quite a bit different than theirs. It just kind of depends. I will say ours is extremely program driven. I've got quite a few programs that have utilized Nature Explore, and they also are able to get their insight and input into their projects. But we require a lot of community drive. If participants, we don't take the torch and run for them. They really need to kind of, hold their torch and run, and we support them in the work. But they are really needing to do a lot of the work. Some not on their own. We really help them out a lot. But we kind of require a lot of this community effort behind the programs that we work with. We need a lot of really dedicated, excited teachers and families and staff to make these programs go forward. Yeah, and I would say Nature Explorer is probably already international. They've got quite a few things outside of the country already. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just kind of get us started about specific to the work. This is a really great video from our colleagues over at NC State. It's about 6 minutes long, but it gives a really great overview of the work that we do. And I will share that now.
Setting the stage for the children to understand the beauty of being outdoors, to understand creativity, to understand exploration, to just understand that they can figure something out, they can look for answers, and they can just make things work.
When children are playing, they are learning. They're exploring the world, they're exploring their relationships, their feelings about each other. It's a very holistic kind of process, and it's basically how kids learn.
The impact on the preschool children leaving the program, I believe, is just a change in habits of going outside and playing, making better choices with snack or just food in general. They're really excited about the garden, about going to get, tomatoes off the vine.
The majority of young children are enrolled in child care centers. This is where they get most of their physical activity and develop habits that will track throughout adulthood. The outdoors can be designed to support these good habits.
I believe that being outside is less stressful for them, and having the nature around them has been, I think, amazing. Of course, I'm passionate about it too, so having them, get dirty, play in the dirt, and have that opportunity to not be told you can't do that, put the bugs down, you can't, instead encouraging them to play with the bugs and learn about them and explore.
We know that after renovation, children are more active. The teachers have less custodial behaviors, meaning they have to do less because children are so engaged with the environment that they have to only bring some toys, and facilitate play, and then play flows.
Very small changes can make a huge difference. And maybe the most fascinating thing to me is that the simple addition of a circulating pathway makes kids move.
The Natural Learning Initiative uses a number of design principles appropriate for healthy childhood development. These principles include increasing shade, planting trees and shrubs, creating vegetable gardens, adding curvy looped pathways, installing lawns, planting fruit trees and vines, providing natural materials, adding outdoor toys and storage, ensuring at least 10 settings in the space, including settings for gross motor activity, and creating outdoor classrooms with storage. All of these design principles work together to create an integrated environment that supports all the needs of the children that are using it.
The community participation process engages the broader community of stakeholders and involves staff in making design decisions, which results in low-cost, high-impact developments on the ground.
The design workshop is the most exciting part of the design process. We've done the survey and met with stakeholders, and now we're sitting with the staff of the Child Care Center, usually the director and some of the lead teachers and maybe some parents. We're engaged in a hands-on process developing the design program, which is mainly a paper record of what their needs are. Every center has a different kind of space, different shape, different size, a different size of population. So every project's different, and that's what makes it very interesting for us. By the end of the workshop, which lasts about a day, the design's totally figured out. We use pieces of construction paper to help us make really quick decisions, and then we bring that back to the office, draw it up, and fine-tune the design over a matter of weeks until it becomes the final master plan for the center.
These are living landscapes, and the growth of the landscape is like a growth of a child. It's incremental. It won't happen overnight. So you take it piece by piece. Sometimes it's planting trees, a garden here, a garden there, and in a couple of years you have a very, very high quality outdoor learning environment. The directors and the teachers tell us that the behavior of the children change. They also say there is more harmony outside, there is much more to do. Children with special needs are more integrated because there is always something to do for them. And they are so proud of their gardens that is probably their great success.
Playing in nature can increase science learning and school readiness. The number of happy faces is one gauge of success.
A high quality in the outdoors is an environment that supports the interest of children, that supports play activities, that supports their learning, that supports the curriculum, where the teacher can go outside not only for children to exercise, but for learning.
Great. So hopefully that kind of gave everyone a little bit of an overview of kind of the foundation of our work and what the process looks like that we utilize. So just to kind of break some of those kind of pieces out, take some time to kind of break some of those pieces down. So one of the things, like I always tell people right off the bat, is I'm not a landscape designer or landscape architect, but I have been trained to run these workshops. So one part of our component is this landscape design process. There's lots of great resources. Thank you, Lindsay, for sharing the resource from Outdoor Nebraska. There's a lot of great things. I just got a new book. I think it's actually in my car still, about designing outdoor spaces that just came out. There's lots of wonderful, amazing ideas out there. And we actually love it when people find ways to do it on their own. We don't have the capacity, even in a smaller state population wise like Nebraska, to help out every single person that wants to do this. We actually are going to be starting a more competitive process starting this year for programs that are interested in having our support. just because we're just a small team getting started, and we have over 20 programs right now. Oh, I forgot to put that map in this PowerPoint too. I'm not very good at making my PowerPoints lately. But we have over 20 programs across the state of Nebraska right now that are at some level, either in the process or starting the process, or they've shared interest with us, and they're kind of gathering their community partners as we before we move forward. But we are so much more than just the landscape design component. We really depend a lot, and we'll talk about that in a second too, with that landscape design component on local partners. So this community engagement component is massive. So we are always looking for great community partners that will landscape designers or architects to come in and help with the design. One of, we do during those workshops, the design workshops you saw in the video, we typically recommend that a couple of the administrators be there, a few teachers that are like really excited. We really want those to be people that are excited and dreaming big about their outdoor spaces. Often we have several family members attend. We had a really great program out in Albion, Nebraska. It's Boone Beginnings, which is a new early childhood program that just opened up there this fall. And when we did their design workshop, they had their whole group was all parent volunteers at this point. They had their director hired, and I think that was the only person that was hired at the time that we did the design workshop last year. One of the people that was there was the person that was actually doing the irrigation system for them. It was one of the volunteers on the committee. His company was doing the irrigation system. And it was so cool because we totally were able, so we do these looping pathways, and somehow in one of the things, someone was like, I'd love to have like, spigots like throughout the space, because it's always, you always have water spigots in like really difficult places and they're not easy to access. And then somehow we got talking about how fun it would be to have like an arch that goes over the pathway that could like spray water on the children, like, for like water days in the summer. And this gentleman that was there, he's like, oh my gosh, that would be so easy to install some spigots that could do that while we're doing the irrigation system that we're already doing. He's like, it'll seriously cost like $5 for like the piece to do that. Like, that'll be so easy. So it's just really cool to see how engaging our community really brings out these resources and these opportunities that you just never thought about in a design. I've always thought that'd be super fun, but we usually don't start these projects at that bare of a level. It was a brand new building and brand new space. And we don't usually have the irrigation guy there to say, yes, this is totally possible. So that was one of my favorite. I can't wait to go next summer, and I hopefully see whatever they're going to call it, their water car wash or whatever in action. And then so we really do community engagement from the very beginning all the way through. And then we also will do this activation support. So we'll talk about that some more in depth too. And my desire to really utilize the Preventing Obesity by Design model and partner with ECHO through this is really because of these three components. Having been an early childhood educator myself as a teacher and a director, these programs are not often successful when we have outside interventions that come in and they do their great work and then they leave, and the teachers don't maybe have the capacity or the knowledge or the understanding about how to implement this work moving forward. So I kind of talked about this a little bit already, but most of my work has been in licensed childcare programs and some pre-K, public pre-Ks. We love to work with other groups. People ask us a lot, Katie, you don't really like, I love older children. I just don't do as much in this informal schooling. But they're like, you don't work in these settings, you work with little ones. So how does this translate to, middle schoolers or high schoolers? And the thing that's so great about this system is that when we use a collaborative design process, it's not about what Katie wants. It's not about what the landscape architects want. It's about what you want. And we help you dream big, and we help you also be realistic in your action plan that we'll talk about in a minute, and really think about how you can engage in these spaces. I work at the Nebraska Extension Office over at 80th and Center here in Omaha, and we have this old dock, like this giant concrete, I don't know, it's like the side goes along the whole side of our building. It's crumbling, it's falling apart. We're going to be utilizing this exact same collaborative design process to design an outdoor engaging space for a Nebraska Extension Office that'll have some places for teaching, some demonstration sites, right? So that's a completely all adults, mostly using that space, maybe some children through our 4-H program, but using the same model. Like I said earlier too, George Cunningham is our partner from Nebraska Wildlife Federation, and he is extremely interested in how this can look in community and public spaces. Some of my inspiration came, if you've ever been to the zoo here in Omaha, the zoo's outdoor environment for children over in the oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but the children's space at the zoo was absolutely amazing. And some of the things we like about are even things like the signage. So thinking about when you're out in public spaces, how can you use signage to have families think about why this is important? Why, and a lot of you, if you think of any, if I know someone from Continental Forest, even think about things like the signage and some intentional, creating small intentional spaces along public trails or in public parks, and how we can really be just a little bit more intentional about what kind of play and affordances we want to see children do in these spaces, and how we can support families and supporting that for children. So like I said earlier, the parts that we do here is a site analysis and mapping. I've had a lot of fun as I worked in more rural Nebraska, learning about GIS mapping systems aren't quite as accurate in rural Nebraska as they are in the bigger cities. I've had I went out to Kennesaw and did some work out there, and our measurements still worked, but we were like way in somebody else's property on the map that we had originally had. So that was fun to work on. But we do a lot of this kind of site analysis and mapping. The programs help a lot with this too, just getting measurements so that we're ready for the design workshop. We do provide schematic designs of varying levels of intricacy. The one you see here is one that's provided by Early Childhood Health Outdoors with an NWF. They do have multiple landscape architects on staff. We have 0 landscape architects on staff at this point. And we really, in a lot of times, don't really want to be doing the design quite to this level. We want you to work with your own landscape architect or designer within your own community to help with this. But we'll show you a couple other kind of steps on what that looks like. Part of that is just funding based. My husband's an engineer, so he does some of the design work for us pro bono. But these ones that you see here are really, those are done by landscape architects and designers. And then the really key point with the landscape design piece is actually not even so much the design. It's even the very basic design we get from the workshop actually suffices for a lot of programs, but it's the action plan. It's really supporting these programs and how do we get from this really fun, awesome design to actually making something happen. Once again, it's extremely collaborative. We work on, these are all shared through Google Drive with the program. So it's an open document we can work on back and forth, where we work with their goals and help them think about the order that things need to happen in. Sometimes it is just logistics, what works. You can't put a concrete pathway in and then put all your landscaping in and then put a concrete pathway in, but thinking about budgets and what that looks like. We do not do budgeting for programs. We really leave that up to them. It's up to them to figure out what funding they have and where they want to make that. We do support programs in grant writing. If we got a few grants that we're looking at that would be kind of larger grants that we would then probably not usually award the money, but we usually pay for things through the grants that we might get. At this point, it just depends on what kind of funding sources we have. So this is kind of, we have a program here in Omaha that this was, they just had one small space they wanted to kind of naturalize. This was the design that we came up with through a collaborative design workshop in March of 2019. And this is all they needed. They took this to the landscape art designer they were working with. We really was just kind of just a few, it wasn't really that intricate, just putting in this orange pathway that you can see, the pathway is drawn in orange. And then on the right-hand side, that pink kind of triangle is a deck, a beautiful deck they put in. I should have put a picture of, gosh, sorry, I'm like, I should put a picture of that up too. I have a picture of their completed space I should have put there. And then they had a hill that had been fenced off that we actually moved the fence so that they were able to access the hill. They put a deck and a slide, which slides on the hill are my favorite thing. They're much safer too than just slides out in the open. And this is all they needed. I mean, we were going to try to work on a CAD drawing for them. And they're like, we totally have a landscape designer already that works with this church that we're with. So they took this and I met with them once and they took it and ran with it. And that was all they needed. Some programs need a little bit more support. This is kind of an example of I don't know why the coloring is so off on this one. I hit the wrong button on my PDF viewer and all my colors changed in this beautiful neon green. But this is a little bit of kind of like the next level that is a scale, once again, a scale drawing that we have a PowerPoint that has like 30 slides. It goes along with it with different options that programs can pick. This is kind of like the next, like not as expensive to do level. And then this is the one that our colleagues at NC State and Early Childhood Health Outdoors with NWF do. These ones are a little bit, can be a little bit more costly. These are ones that really landscape architectural landscape designers need to usually do. So programs get kind of this level of design if they are needing to apply for some significant grant funding. As many of you know, if you've done grants before, if you have a grant that you need to show what you're going to do, and it's a pretty costly grant, you might need to have a little bit of a higher quality rendering. And we support programs in finding ways to get those. So the other really big piece here is this idea of activation support. So one of my kind of big contributions to the work of ECHO and NWF is professional development. They already have a wide variety of professional development offerings that Nebraska Extension is adding to and helping them enhance. We also talk about a certificate program we're starting here soon. We help with volunteer and community engagement. So we oftentimes host, co-host a volunteer and family event along with the programs. We usually do one that we kind of, once the design is kind of in a place where the teachers and the program feels pretty confident that they like it, we often do kind of like a launch. COVID has definitely put a hindrance to that. Usually those were in person, and we had after, a meal that we would pizza or hot dogs or something after childcare was done for the day, and kind of launch that. We provide kind of a list of activities and support that we needed. So we're kind of trying to rethink what that looks like. We're hoping that maybe this spring and summer we can restart some of those. And then technical assistance. So at any time, not just when the design, these designs are never really done. They're always changing and modifying as children and teachers use the spaces. But if they have a question or maybe something comes up with licensing and they aren't sure about something, we're always there to support them, kind of with the technical assistance piece as well. So I said earlier too, the professional development has been a huge component of this. So we provide professional development right now. Nebraska Extension is providing the majority of our PD for no cost. We have sponsors that help sponsor it. If you're ever interested in sponsoring professional development, let me know. We're always eagerly searching sponsors out to try to help keep these costs free or low cost for our participants statewide in all topics of child development. But at this point, the ECHO program is sponsoring all of our nature-based learning classes and making them at no cost to providers. Most of these are online. We have a wonderful partnership with Keep Omaha Beautiful, where we've been offering, working with Hannah over at KOB, and she's been offering a lot of really great of the Growing Up Wild, Project Learning Treat, and Project Rut trainings in person. And we have been supporting that work by using the office space, kind of co-sponsoring, co-hosting those classes that have been able to, some of them have been able to be in person last year. Kind of along those lines, I mentioned it briefly, is we're really excited to be officially launching. I think I sent the first email out about this weekend, our nature-based learning certificate program pilot. So this is really trying, like I said, ECHO, between ECHO and ourselves, we have over 20 online classes in nature-based learning, everything from how to design these spaces, supporting young children in the winter. We just have a wide variety of classes. And we were trying to kind of find a way to be a little more intentional about when we offer certain classes and how often we offer classes. And we also really want to try to encourage early childhood educators to take multiple classes. And then when they're taking, and a lot of them already do, so when they're taking these classes is to get them some recognition that they've taken, a group of classes. So the professional development, it'll be between 10 and 12 classes is kind of what we're looking at right now. We really believe in collaborative co-creation in our processes. So this is really going to be determined a lot by our pilot participants as far as what they think the best core classes are, what classes we look at as electives. We're going to be requiring some level of reflection after taking classes and sharing how they have implemented the work or the things they learned in classes into their work. There'll be opportunities to engage the community of learners, probably online formats, potentially Zoom meetings as well, with just having time to talk to other educators that are experiencing the same barriers and challenges and same celebrations of getting children outside. And then there'll be some type of a capstone project. Our goal is that we'd like people to be able to complete it within 2 to 3 years. We're also hoping to offer classes. We will be offering classes frequently enough, though, that if somebody wanted to be kind of aggressive, they could potentially finish such a certificate program in a year. At this time, it is the only online, and like I said, so some of the classes will be available in person, but you could do it completely online. And to our knowledge, this is the first nature-based learning certificate program available all online for early childhood educators. Another really exciting thing about this as well.
Sorry to jump in.
Yeah.
We had a question on there, and now is this just for formal early childhood educators, or would this be for like non-formal environmental
Totally
educators
non-formal too.
well?
Yeah. It's really whoever, okay. Yeah. So they're definitely early childhood based. So I would say anyone working with children birth to 8 years old, families, informal, non-formal, anyone that's interested, we would actually love to have more, the merrier, even if we've got some of our, maybe even elementary age, even into older elementary age. especially for the pilot. We'd love to know, we'd love to have you in the pilot and get your feedback and information on it. So yeah, thanks for seeing that, Amanda. And then, yeah, so you can click on the unl.edu one. You can actually take a picture right now of that QR code, and it'll bring up a link to information. It should bring, you should be able to take a picture of it, I think, and you would even be able to link Excited right there to it. And then you can also email me. Like I said, it'll be officially launching in the middle of February. And just a few of the classes that are going to be offered soon are listed here on the right-hand side. Okay, I'm getting pretty close on time, so I'm going to kind of skip back through here. So another really important part of this is teacher engagement. We are looking into finding ways to do some more coaching for this. Right now, we do kind of informal, mostly coaching for the administrators. We are working with our statewide team with our Go Knapsack program, as well as our Master Gardener program, to find ways to have more boots on the ground at programs statewide. We know that there's a lot of barriers to getting children outside in early childhood settings. And sometimes teacher confidence is a significant barrier to getting kids outside. So we're really looking at ways that we can have teachers more engaged in outdoor settings, supporting teachers in what that engagement looks like, and getting boots on the ground to support teachers in that work. Like I said, we're really fortunate here in Omaha. We've had Master Gardeners working with early childhood programs for the last 7 years. This year, we are hoping to kind of pivot our Extension Master Gardener program, that they'll be supporting these sites here in the Omaha area, and then also kind of creating a framework for Master Gardener programs across the state and even throughout the country that work with our programs, on how the Master Gardeners can have a crucial role in supporting the care, especially the care of these landscapes, the care of the vegetable gardens that we plant, both vegetable gardens and whatever other plant species that we might have at these programs. If anybody's ever, anyone that's cared for a garden knows it's not like, just plant it and let it go. And a lot of teachers need support in that. I talked already about community engagement. A lot of times we have try to do family work days, engaging the community. You kind of never know what areas of expertise people are going to have. I had a meeting here with a group in Omaha, and one of the ladies worked for a company that sells concrete. And I'm like, that's awesome, because we put in concrete pathways at most of these programs. So really engaging the families. We call it kind of like a funds of knowledge, or families, family resources. We don't usually like to ask families for funds or money, but they have a lot of other wonderful ways that they can contribute to the program with their time or their area of expertise, or even just some connections they might have. So this is kind of the, one of our last big quotes we'd like to share, is that change is incremental. We really do not believe in bulldozing bulldozing outdoor spaces, especially, if we have an existing site. One of my big goals is that I want children to have continued access to the site. We know that sometimes we might have a few days the site might be shut down, but I never want to see one of our programs have their outdoor space shut down for an extended period of time because of the work that's being done. We actually like this stuff to happen slowly over time. Even when we have our completely empty spaces that are brand new builds, we oftentimes will say, here's kind of the core things we're going to put in, but maybe these few spaces we're not really sure. So we really don't actually encourage programs to try to complete the spaces before children and teachers have a chance to actually use them and see what's working for them. So I've got about 5 minutes left. I've got some quick slides of, I think the video probably showed you guys a pretty good before and after already. I'd love to take some questions, see if there's any questions. And I've got a couple slides of a before and afters, but I'd love to make sure we've got all of your questions answered. And if we don't get to that, I think you've got probably a pretty good idea of the work we do already.
Katie, I know you had mentioned that, you work with Hannah at Keep Omaha Beautiful, doing some Growing Up Wild workshops. And I wanted to take this time to share, if folks are interested in taking a Growing Up Wild workshop or other workshops, tomorrow we're actually offering a virtual one. So on the Jamboard on slide 8 is where you can go to find some more information about some early childhood workshop that is going on tomorrow. So shameless plug there for the Jamboard. I wanted to let people know. I also had a few questions. People were really interested in that video that you were showing. And I was wondering if you might share the link or even put that in that resource, because that is a really inspiring video for people to watch, and maybe we can share.
Yeah, absolutely. I will get that. I was going to go back here and just see if I can
And then I see a question in the chat. So while you're doing that, we'll see if we can multitask.
Yeah, great today. Yeah. So the learning tree. That's
yeah. So we
Yeah.
have a question if it follows any specific curriculum or learning theory such as Montessori.
Great question. So I would say nature-based. So the specific ECHO model, I would, yes, not really. I mean, I would say if anything, a lot of our work that we do is very embedded in actually somewhat Montessori, and then also the work of Reggio Emilia and the schools in Reggio Emilia, looking, and really pretty much all nature-based learning is, right. It's very place-based. It's very much about what the world has to offer. We don't really encourage programs to do, thematic units. When we're doing our coaching about how to get outside, if you're supposed to be talking about trains or whatever random thing that is on your curriculum for the week, right, that might, if there's no trains, your program, that's not going to really relate to the, what it is. So we really do a lot of work in emergent curriculum, a lot of work in place-based learning, really encouraging teachers to utilize children's interests and what the world and then the natural world has to offer as opportunities for learning. That's a really important part of the professional development and coaching component, where we really support teachers in being able to learn how to do that. Our Look Who's Hatching program that's one of the classes being offered in February. That's a embryology class where we teach early childhood educators. They hatch out chicken eggs, but we don't tell them that there's chickens inside. It's kind of the whole premise. So it's a really great class to introduce early childhood educators to this idea of following children's interests. So if they think snakes are coming out, you should be talking about snakes. If they think dinosaurs are coming out, you should be talking about dinosaurs. So that's kind of a lot of the methodology that we use in all of our professional development and coaching. I did want to say too, I know we are like right at the end of our time. Another really kind of like, as Amanda does a little plug, I'm kind of doing a plug as well. Like I said, with this online professional development program that we're doing, we really do want people to do some of their classes not with us. That is why we are creating this elective component. Like I said, I think we're probably planning on 6 to 8 core classes that are going to be core classes from ECHO and NW, ECHO's Nebraska and NWF teams. But we also are going to offer a lot of electives. But just like I said, with Keep Omaha Beautiful's Growing Up Wild classes, those will count as electives. So if any of you are offering any type of professional development opportunities to early childhood educators, you can either reach out to me, or if they are doing the certificate program, we haven't quite figured out what the process is going to be for determining what other nature-based classes they take could count as electives. But I'm really hoping that our Nebraska community can help us have opportunities to share some of the work that you're doing and make sure that those are that we are encouraging program or our providers to take those classes as well. And it's 11 o'clock. So
perfect timing, right?
Bottom.
Actually,
I'll go to the end. I have a few links.
Yes, Katie, thank you so much for sharing all your great resources and knowledge with us today on early childhood. Feel free to reach out to Katie. I was in the process of putting that information about your nature certificate on our resource page too, our Jamboard, that's what I was going to call it. So feel free to go on there as well and kind of check some of that stuff out. So Katie, thanks for joining us and presenting on this topic today.